Hello and welcome back to the Soul Pathway podcast. I'm Andy Brine, and today within this interview, we are going to be speaking about the current energies of twin flames, either with regards to the masculine and feminine energies, but we're also going to be speaking about the subjects of mirroring and how mirroring could help us heal aspects within ourselves and also notice triggers when we connect with our twin flames. Before we get started, though, let me introduce Marla again to tell us a bit more about who she is and what she does.
Hi, Andy. Thank you for having me on again. So, yeah, I'm Marla. I have a channel on YouTube called Twin Astrology, and I like to work with twin flames as far as sharing information through what's happening astrologically, reading tarot cards, and channeling messages.
Yeah,
And I think we spoke last time a little bit that I've been on my twin flame journey since 2012.
yeah.
And yeah,
It's
here I am today.
definitely no. It's great. It's great to revisit this subject because we spoke a lot about twin flames before with regards to astrology and synastry charts,
Mhm.
and it'd be interesting to dive into that a bit more with regards to the current energies and what's going on with the planets and how they're influencing us right now as well. And
Yeah.
as we step in more to the age of Aquarius and the energy of union and how we can begin to do that.
Yeah, and I think today is a big day for that. We have the equinox today that we're recording that.
Yeah.
And the equinox is when the sun enters the sign of Aries. It's the astrological new year. So happy new year, Andy. And it's,
Happy New Year.
like the beginning every year when we have this energy.
Yeah, like I say, I've said in a few videos, I did a reading last, beginning for the beginning of March, spring has sprung and we're into new energies and the plants are just flowering right now as well, aren't they, or they're beginning to blossom you know
Not quite where I live, but soon, hopefully.
Same here as well, but just it's just the beginning of that phase, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely getting that message so clearly right now. This is like a new beginning, this major transformation. And I think all of us have been in the energy of feeling this transformation coming since the winter solstice.
Mhm.
And we've been waiting to kind of implement the changes that we're feeling within us. And I feel with this equinox, this is the shift where it's like, it's go time now.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead. The universe is saying, go ahead, my little chicks, go out there and
Yeah.
spread your messages of love.
Very true, very true. And Aries is quite a strong energy anyway, isn't it? Really, Aries is quite a you relate Aries to the bull being bullish, like a bull in a china shop, maybe going after what you want. Maybe it's not just about that, but it's very strong energies and very forthright, I'd say.
Well, Aries is ruled by Mars.
Yeah,
So it is very go, go, go. It's very headstrong. Aries are like the baby of the zodiac. And so this energy is very much concerned with me, who I am, what I want. And that's actually playing a very important role because as we come into this equinox energy, one of the very important shifts that is happening within us is really anchoring the energy of self love.
mm,
And this is coming very strongly from the divine feminine, who, through her journey, is now at this place where I think all of us or all of that energy is really understanding what it means to love the self and accept the self. And what we haven't really seen with that energy, I don't think, is that the divine feminine has been projecting some of that onto her twin and not allowing her twin to come forward
yeah,
without having that self-love. It's like you want that love and you wonder why it's not coming, and you don't realize that hidden deep within your subconscious
yeah,
is a belief that no one can ever love you.
Very true, isn't it? Very true. And that realization sometimes from a feminine aspect is like a big mind blowing um, awakening to think, wow, actually, there's this aspect within myself that doesn't believe I'm worthy of love, you know. And it's
Mhm.
interesting. I did a video about archetypes recently and how we tend to give our love and don't allow it to be received. And what I love about what you just said there is just it's actually saying we are worthy of love. It's not about putting ourselves out there constantly and pushing for the relationship, but allowing it to be responded back to us, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the divine feminine, I watched that video that you did. It was a great video. And you talked about the caretaker energy. And I think that, yeah, that's the divine feminine. And we we tend to always want to be taking care of everybody else and we put ourselves last.
Yeah,
And that's another, inner pattern that was holding us back. Even in mission, when we're trying to go forward in mission, we have to know where to set boundaries. And that's something where I've had lessons with over and over and over again,
yeah,
because you can easily just wear yourself out when you're trying to work with a lot of people. And it's really hard because the feminine is so nurturing and loving. It's really hard to say no, I need to carve out this time for myself.
yeah.
But it's so key, and it's part of that balance with the masculine, because when you talk about coming into union, um I don't know if everybody thinks about what it takes to really balance a union of the divine masculine and feminine in relationship, and how powerful you both are.
Yeah.
And if you're out of balance, the relationship, mm, it doesn't hold a steady frequency. It can bounce around. And that's why a lot of twins have trouble coming together. They can make it together for a little while,
Yeah.
but they're not balanced enough to hold the frequency of individuality within the energy of union.
Very true, very true. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, we said we're talking about mirroring on here as well, within this interview. And the fact that when we're in relationship with our twin flames on a consistent basis or a third dimensional level, there's that constant mirroring and often that's too overwhelming in a third dimensional space. So the separation is essential for them to find love and then come back together in a more harmonious way, isn't it really?
Right. I mean, if you come together out of balance in regards to, for example, what we just talked about, if you're still in that caretaker frequency, you're
Mm,
not going to have proper boundaries. And you're always going to be trying to fix your twin, trying to do everything for them. Your twin they have to be able to do their own thing. They have to have freedom. You both have to have freedom, and
yeah,
they don't need a mommy, right?
yeah, yeah,
You got to um, bring that focus into yourself. And that's what creates the balance. And
definitely, yeah,
it's wonderful to see the divine feminine getting there. And when I say divine feminine, we all have that within us, male and female, masculine, feminine. So even the divine masculine is feeling that within themselves. They're starting to get that, because a lot of what I feel they've been going through is they've been pushing the feminine away in their own way, because they don't feel worthy either,
yeah,
because they don't have the self love.
yeah. And I love that you mentioned that because first of all, I like that you mentioned the feminine aspect here because often people think it's the masculine catching up with the feminine, but in many ways it's not about one or the other, ahead or behind. It's more so noticing those aspects that we have to heal within ourselves because when comes to giving that unconditional love and feeling it, we can feel so overwhelmed by it. And like you mentioned, the motherly energy comes through, doesn't it? All that forceful energy of love that we don't want to give on to our twin flames, but unconsciously maybe we're projecting that onto them.
Yeah.
So But again, with the masculine needs to find that self love as well. And so maybe that's where we are in terms of energies now. Do you feel like the energy of Aries is calling both of them to step into love in a higher vibration?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm posting a reading later on today, and the overall message that I got in that reading was both are stepping into their power, and they're able to do that now because the feminine has embraced that inner love, and because of that, the masculine is now letting go.
Yeah,
He's not trying. I say he, it's genderless, as
yeah,
I said for all that. But the masculine is is starting to be willing to let down that guard a little bit because the worthiness is being felt within, that you don't have to keep the guard up, which is, we said Aries is ruled by Mars. It's that Mars energy
yeah,
of, I've got to wear my armor, I've got to be the warrior, I've got to keep people at bay and be strong.
yeah,
And there's an element within that of the father as well, and being a strong caretaker and taking care of everybody.
yeah. So this is moving away from twin flames slightly, but I wanted to speak about the current energies overall in many ways because we look at what's happening in the world right now and the influence it's having on each and every one of us. And I wonder how much of that is impacting us as twin flames as well. Because, many of us are being restricted in different ways, no matter what country we're in the Western world. But that's causing us to really seek within. And
Mm-hmm.
often seeking within brings out that warrior because we connect with our unconscious, bring it to consciousness, and then that's when we really step into our power, isn't it, really?
Yes, it is. So um I think when you're so restricted externally, like you said, it causes you to go within, and you have to find a way mentally to free yourself from the restrictions.
Yeah,
Maybe it's an opportunity to tune within and see, like, where am I restricting myself inwardly, that this is being reflected to me externally, and
yeah,
how can I let go? Obviously, like what's happened to the world in the last year, a lot of fear has been triggered.
yeah,
And I think we've all had to deal with that fear in one way or another, even if we know as light workers and star seeds that we're here to clear that. I mean, I know I personally, um, I've tried not to be restrictive and allow what's happening to make me feel afraid to go about my daily life. But there have been times where I've had to confront some kind of inner fear.
yeah.
And I see that has a kind of reflection of the collective energy that I'm helping to clear. So I try not to get too attached to
Yeah.
things like that when they come up.
It's interesting how these different things come up though, and everybody's, different aspects because, you could say in many ways us talking about union and us coming together. There's aspects of the world right now that are in division. There are people in two separate camps.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go down the conspiracy route, but certain people believe certain things. Others are very much rigid in other ways of thinking. So it's interesting how those energies are kind of going to be playing out in terms of us coming together.
Well, I did a video a couple months ago called How Political Division is Just Like the Twin Flame Journey. And I likened, you've got one camp, I'll talk about America, right? You've got one camp that is liberal, and you've got one camp that is conservative, and they're very much at odds with each other.
Yeah,
And so, how do you bring union out of that? And I think I used as an example that the divine feminine energy is representing the conservative, and the masculine was representing the liberal. And it's just like going in and clearing like we do on this journey, so that eventually we realize that we're just a reflection of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I guess going back to mirroring, when you start a journey like that, like when we start the twin journey, I see it as we tend to be mirroring the opposing energy. So
Okay.
like whatever you're carrying, your twin might mirror the opposite of that. But the more energetically you come into union, then you're mirroring the same energy. Does that make sense? I don't know if you feel it that way, but it's
Yeah.
like when you come into union, and I mean union on the 5D plane, when you feel your energies are so merged together that there is no separation, that energy is aligned. And so what you're carrying within is the same.
Yeah. And how I know people have someone asked me this in our previous interview actually in the comments section. Someone asked, how does this relate to twin flames that have maybe passed on? How does it affect union then? And I think that we've all got work to do. But obviously, would you say they've got work to do in the spiritual realms and plane?
Do I think our twin is working, the twin that passed away?
Yeah, I guess how would you see union working with regards to, twin
Mhm.
flames that are, are living in separate realities in many ways, or
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, and that's really hard. I feel for people that have chosen to experience that. But your journey continues. Just because your twin has crossed over to the spirit realm, it doesn't mean your twin flame journey stops. It carries on and you still connect with them. And I speak to a lot of people that are in that position, and they definitely are still feeling their twin's energy, perhaps even more powerfully than when your twin is also physically incarnated in this reality. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can even bring the energy to the 3D realm. Um, for example, like a walk-in, your twin soul could walk into a body here, or you can connect with another soulmate that's still carrying the frequency
yeah,
of the twin pair, or there may just be like a very high level soulmate that's going to come in to assist your journey in the 3D reality while still having that connection to your twin and spirit.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I feel like that's something that's been coming up. I'm seeing that more and more.
yeah.
So there's definitely an important aspect to those twin pairs who have chosen to bring in new templates and alignments for us around the energy.
And what I find interesting at this time as well is the fact that we are speaking about twin flames, and twin flames is the energy we are communicating about. But in many ways at this time, I find there are a lot of divine partnerships coming together to express the divine love at the highest vibration possible within those partnerships, and I think that's beautiful. So maybe there's aspects of that coming in terms of self love, embodying that self love, whether it's the masculine or feminine, and really honoring that partnership of what it is for the soulmate relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the more we move into this energy of ascension, the more people are able to embody this energy. And I think we're seeing how far we've come. And sometimes when we look around in the world, we may think we haven't come, that we haven't made any changes. But yeah, when we look around and we see like people coming together in these high vibrational relationships, whatever we label them, it's showing that we certainly have done a lot of work and we've come a long way.
Yeah,
And now this is being physically embodied. by more and more people.
Yeah, definitely. I find within these relationships and noticing others in these relationships as well that a lot of people actually find it very difficult to how do I say it? Really connect with this love and fully embody the love because the love in itself is so forever expansive and overwhelming that people find it difficult to encapsulate or really embody it fully that they allow that fear to overwhelm them and pull themselves away from their relationships, which I find is a bit of a shame and a bit of a challenge. But I think it's something that we have to honor and connect with, so that we can come into harmonious union again, whether it's twin flames or a high level soulmate as well.
Yeah. And I think that kind of also there's a connection to the collective energies with that, because our collective energies are continually expanding,
Hmm.
and that helps us, as individuals, we're all just part of that. You can't really disassociate yourself from the collective energies.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they're all always at play, aren't they? They're always at play, and we've got to go with the flow of what the energy brings us in those different moments.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I don't think that, I mean, people wonder why aren't more twins in union? Well, take a look at the collective energy.
yeah,
There is no energy of union in the collective at the moment.
yeah,
And as I said, we're a reflection of that. It's like has within, so without kind of energy. It's all working together. And that's why a lot of twins have to be patient, is because we're waiting for the energetic openings and alignments
mm,
within the larger collective and the timing of that. But I think we're close. And I think this is going to be a big year for shifts, especially with what we've been talking about and
yeah.
coming into this idea of self-love. But we do have this full moon coming up, Andy, at the end of this month, a
Okay.
full moon in Libra. And we're already
Yeah,
seeing how that energy is going to trigger people.
yeah.
And I
Okay.
think there's going to be more triggers, because what I'm getting is we have to kind of we have to move past the pain.
Yeah,
We talked about that Mars energy and having that armor on. And we do that because we've experienced pain
yeah,
so often. What's happening at that full moon for people is the moon will be in Libra opposing the sun, Venus, and Chiron all in an exact conjunction on the 8th degree of Aries. And Chiron is our soul wound, and
okay.
Venus has to do with love and how we are able to express that love.
Yeah,
And when Venus and Chiron come together, it tends to be a time of clearing abandonment and clearing the walls to our hearts. When I say
yeah,
they come together, I'm talking about when they're in hard aspects. So like 4 times a year, they've got their conjunction, then a square, an opposition, and another square, and then they start a new cycle. So we're starting this new cycle um, on
yeah,
that full moon. What it's asking us to do is, um, well, let me step back a minute, because authenticity has been a major focus
yeah,
for the light worker community and for twin flames for the last couple years, moving more and more into authenticity, which has a lot to do with this energy of Aries, because
mhm,
Aries people tend to be authentic and straightforward,
yeah,
and they're the warrior archetype. And Chiron's been in Aries for the last couple years, kind of assisting this energy too.
yeah,
So um, it's in order to be authentic, you've got to take your armor off and you have to let your heart shine, even if it
definitely.
means you're vulnerable and someone might hurt you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I speak a lot about archetypes, as you know, like I did in a few videos, and I speak about the archetype of the warrior in a massive way. And I love that you mentioned it with relation to Mars and Aries,
Mhm.
because yeah, the warrior is the person who puts on that suit of armor to be strong, and they don't want to share any vulnerability because they feel it's a weakness. And I feel the greatest strength comes in connecting with those vulnerable aspects and expressing them outwardly, because it allows us to shine in a very strong way, in a way that it's like, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to allow myself to be expressed in that way and not
Mhm.
hidden. And I think it's beautiful, but it's a journey to get there, isn't it, really? You
It is. It is. I mean, it's not something you do overnight because, of course, we have all this programming that we have to be a certain way. And society wants us to be a certain way, and our family wants us to be a certain way, and our partners want us to be a certain way. And we develop this belief from when we're children that if we're not a certain way, if I don't act a certain way, mommy doesn't show love to me, mommy gets mad at me.
yeah, yeah,
And we don't want to feel that pain. And so we tend to just become a reflection of what is expected of us. So to
yeah,
take that off and just say, like you said, this is me, this is who I'm going to be, and I don't care if I'm accepted. It's hard, but it is that Aries energy, you know. Aries
very
can
interesting.
embody
Yeah,
that. So we have this full moon coming up, but then after that, we have a new moon in Aries. And that will
mhm,
give us an opportunity to really embody that. And Aries has that strength.
mm,
They're I always think of Aries when I think of that energy. They're the policemen, the firefighters, the soldiers.
yeah.
And when there's danger and everyone else is running the other way, that Aries person is running towards it.
Yeah, and I think there's where that's where the aspect of the bull in the china shop comes in, because often they don't look at the dangers that are around them, or the problems that they're causing in terms of being that bull, because self-awareness has to come into play. Yes, we have to drive forward and be raging like a bull sometimes, but we have to have that consciousness about us of, you know, who else around us is going to be influenced by our actions, and how much of an impact are we going to have on ourselves? How much of an impact is that going to have on ourselves? And I
Mhm.
think that's a really important question to answer with Aries here as well. You know,
And that's the Libra energy, the opposite of Aries.
yeah,
That's, how is this affecting everybody else?
definitely. I guess obviously Libra is all about that balance. Though I find a lot with Librans, which is it's not a bad thing at all. But many of them are striving for balance. They're really striving for that balance because that's the key energy with them. And yet balance can always be found within. It's not necessarily going out there and always seeking that balance, but knowing that we can have harmony within, and not having to balance this or that in our lives, but just be harmonious with what is coming into our lives.
Well, the shadow element of Libra is kind of being that caretaker, wanting to please everybody. That you can take that energy too far, which um, I mean, if you're have that Libra energy, and we all have it somewhere, you have to bring that balance. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I like to teach astrology in pairs because if you want to heal the shadow of your sign, you're going to do that by embodying the opposite sign.
yeah. Very interesting. I never thought of it like that, and it's a good way to look at it actually. So if we look at the Libran energy, um, what is their opposite sign then? Is it Aries?
Mhm. So
Interesting.
the Aries energy is about my will and what I want.
Mm-hmm.
and kind of going after what you want without sometimes looking at the consequences, like you said.
Yeah.
And, perhaps you hurt someone in the process, where Libra is, I need to create harmony in my life. And because Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is a planet that really wants harmony,
Yeah.
can't stand like discord,
Yeah.
then it tends to go overboard, or it can if you're more in the shadow element, like I said, where I've got to create harmony at any cost. So I'm going to do everything to keep all my relationships around me balanced, even if I'm sacrificing
Yeah.
everything that I want. So yeah, if you can bring the balance, and you can take your individuality and your drive to create something, and balance that with, um, how am I also creating a kind of reciprocal positive relationship with other people? At least
Yeah.
not focusing on others, but finding that balance.
And I love that. I again going back to what you said about like looking at astrology within, partnerships, what's their partner sign. But I wanted to speak briefly, about the mirroring aspect, because there's aspects of mirroring here, like you mentioned, with the Libra energy and the Aries energy. How does this play out with twin flames? How can we look at mirroring in a way that yes, there might be aspects that trigger us, but how can we look at it in a way that this can heal us to help us move forward rather than just seeing it as a mirror for growth? Because I think sometimes we look at things as a mirror and we see it as a mirror, which is fantastic. But sometimes we don't honour the healing that we need to do in order to step into who we are at the same time.
Hmm. Well, I think it can be hard to to see the mirroring in ourselves, right? There's some kind of resistance
Yeah,
to us about something if it's being shown to us through a mirror.
yeah,
So it's, how can we get rid of that resistance? How can we open ourselves? How can we begin to stay open minded? Some of these things might be very subconscious
yeah.
in people, and that's why they may not catch that mirroring right away.
Very true.
So I think, doing inner healing is so important, especially on, what's coming up for me that I've talked about recently, what I'm seeing in the collective and what I'm experiencing myself, is that we need to look at our repressed emotions,
Yeah,
because that's contributing a lot to what we're projecting and what's being mirrored. And we're not seeing it in ourselves because it's so deeply subconscious.
yeah, definitely. Like when I was looking at, I do a lot of work with the shadow, and looking at Carl Jung's work and
Yeah.
him speaking about the shadow. And obviously, the shadow is held within our unconscious, and it's said that our shadow is literally unconscious to us, it's blind to us. And I believe, going back to what you said about mirroring, we really need to be honest with ourselves, completely honest and transparent with ourselves. So when we see aspects of mirroring, if we can be completely honest, we can allow ourselves to see. But I think we have to take that journey of vulnerability, in many ways, and transparency. But for me, it's also understanding our conditioning. Because if we can understand our conditioning, we can understand the suppressed and repressed emotions that have been formed within our unconscious as well.
That's a good point. Yeah. So much of what we're working on and what's affecting us, I mentioned it earlier, like our programming
Yeah,
on and our belief systems that affect us, and our past lives have a lot to do with this kind of thing as well.
yeah, definitely. So I don't want to diverge too much, but what we said we would like to do within this interview was provide a reading of the masculine and feminine energies. And I wanted to do a little plug, first of all, for Marla, because Marla's just released some amazing oracle cards for twin flames, and they came out very recently. She's got a Kickstarter campaign that you can find out more about below this video. What we're going to do is we're going to use her cards and her deck to explore the energies of twin flames and what's coming up at the moment for the masculine and the feminine energies. So, do you want to speak a bit more about your cards before we jump into the reading, Marla?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. So I've developed a deck with Kimberly Aria, who she's at Intuit Publishing. She's already published 3 Oracle decks. This is her 4th one, the one that we created. And it's called Messages from the Beloved. So it's 122 cards broken down into 11 suits, 11 cards and 11 suits, plus a bonus card. And, going with mirroring and projections, what the primary focus, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with this card, but you can ask your beloved, whatever label you use, for a message, and you might see in that message, you identify some projections, or there are cards in here that say, hey, you're projecting.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just pull a couple cards. I'll pull 3 cards for what the divine feminine wants to say to the masculine, and then we can talk about them.
Fantastic, fantastic. And while Marla's doing that, I will say one thing I loved about this deck when looking at them myself. I thought that the suits were absolutely fantastic. Some aspects of Oracle cards I find are great, but what I love about tarot is the fact that they've got all these different suits and they've got, some real deep, insightful meanings. And what I find with Marla's deck is they bring these suits into play as well to provide these deeper meaning and insight. So I just wanted to mention that while you were shuffling the cards there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So the first card that I have here is your children need to come first. Trust that they're part of our plan. And it has an alternate meaning of our inner children need to come first. And so this is in the suit of karmic ties, which relates to what kind of karma you might be working through, which to me just represents, hey, what's your patterns? What are you cycling through here at this time?
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, this card is about the divine feminine saying we need some inner child healing right now. Which I think is, we're definitely feeling that. I mean, when we go back to self-love and abandonment, which a lot of people are feeling, and rejection, because, in the twin flame dynamic, one of the biggest wounds we feel is rejection from our twin. And I think that's something that's coming up, especially for the divine feminine right now. And that's all about our inner child.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, we spoke about that with the shadow, really. There's a lot of stuff come up with the shadow, healing, being honest with ourselves, even being honest with our ancestral wounds and what needs to be worked through in order to step into who we are, isn't it? So.
Yeah. But we can't be honest with ourselves. How can we be our authentic self?
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah.
So the second card here is you're projecting your own fears and limitations onto me. Go within and understand you're seeing yourself, not me.
I love it. I don't know how these cards came out today, but the subject of our talk is all about mirroring and mirroring and projections, limitations. Fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it? So
yeah, and this whole suit is called mirrors.
Okay.
And so each of the cards can represent a pattern that's likely to be mirrored between you. And actually, when I drew cards for the equinox, this one came out as well, I think. Yeah, from the divine feminine to the masculine. So it's really interesting.
Very interesting, yeah.
The energy seems to be very consistent when I get messages. So the third card here is there are messages being exchanged through music and movies. Listen carefully and trust what you hear.
Mhm.
So this is under telepathy.
Yeah.
So, and I think, music and movies play a huge part in healing for twin flames because it triggers a lot.
Yeah.
I know so many twins can relate to music, and I've been wanting to do a video actually on healing with films and how they can help us even subconsciously when
Yeah.
we watch certain films. I mean, maybe that's just me because I like historical dramas. That tends to be my favorite. So I always connect some kind of past life energy to the films I'm watching.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like doing the same. I like to watch some good films that maybe trigger aspects within me, but it's what do triggers allow us to do? Triggers are pinpointers to where we need to heal from my perspective. So they're a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to, when we're triggered, right, that brings up the emotions that's connected to that pattern, and we tend to want to push the emotions away from us.
Yeah.
So I think going back to what we talked about earlier, it's learning how to embrace the emotion without attaching so much to
Yeah.
it so that you can get to the core of why that emotion's there. I've been doing a lot of work with that
Yeah.
um, lately myself, as I said, and it's really helped me uncover a lot of things that
Yeah.
that really were kind of hidden inside of me. Let's see what the masculine wants to say to the feminine.
Perfect. Yeah, I think when it comes to triggering, I've been doing the same as you, trying to sit with the emotion. It's not about being overwhelmed by the trigger, but honoring it for what it is, so that we can shift it in a way that it doesn't affect us from a wounded aspect, but more so that we can come from a place of higher consciousness and enlightenment within ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first message here from the masculine is I've been giving my power away to people in my life. I'm learning how to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that I received about the equinox was stepping into power. And, obviously you need to have that self-love in order to be able to know where to set the right boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think, when we think about the masculine, we may not think that the masculine has a problem with boundaries because, at least when it comes to the twin flame dynamic, they seem to have no problem creating boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think in other areas of their life, they tend to have a problem with boundaries because you see a lot of people that embody the divine masculine, they still can have that people pleaser, and maybe that goes back to the
Yeah.
energy of the warrior that wants to care for everybody and protect everybody.
Definitely. Definitely. I think with the masculine energy as well, though, the masculine isn't just that strong warrior energy, but there's also other aspects of it which for me relates to conditioning, very tied to conditional aspects, whereas the
Yeah,
feminine is more so that going with the flow and living by their intuition.
yeah. I think, when we look at the patriarchy too, and it's easy to see like how the patriarchy has created, artificial standards and issues for women, but we don't necessarily think, let's look at what the patriarchy has done to the masculine energy,
Yeah.
which, they really created a lot of limitations
Definitely,
for the
absolutely.
masculine energy, about what is acceptable behavior, and responsibility and controlling things,
Yeah.
which can all come into play with boundary issues and
Yeah.
your power.
Mm.
So the second message here from the masculine is I'm trying to figure out this connection. I've never experienced anything like it before. And this is a telepathy card. So, what I'm getting a lot around the divine masculine right now is it's really important for them to explore the 5D elements of the dynamic. And the last few months, they've been awakening to that more and more.
Yeah.
Awakening because it's like they're maybe not resisting it so much anymore. It maybe might have caused fear previously to feel some of that 5D energy because it's very much connected to our emotions
Yeah.
as well. Um, and now with their heart awakening more, their emotions coming up more, there's more of this connection to the 5D. But yeah, like I said, it's so important for them to explore that side of themselves because that's really where they're going to
Yeah.
find the commitment to the union. What's going to change them, it's not going to be something that happens in 3D. What's going to change them is what comes through their spiritual side, their higher self, and their inner truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good card there. Very good card. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean the card is saying, um gosh, it's hard for me to understand this connection because I've never known that this was possible.
Yeah, and going back to, some twin flame connections who haven't necessarily met in the physical, but you've got them, both of the masculine and feminine are aware of the connection. But the feminine is so very much in tune with it that they can acknowledge the connection almost instantly. Whereas the masculine energy really feels the connection, but is often overwhelmed by it so much that they retreat from it,
Hmm.
even when they may have not met in the physical.
Hmm. And that's a perfect example of that early mirroring of the opposite energies,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because the feminine like wants to chase, this is a very traditional runner chaser.
yeah,
The feminine is so aligned with it and she wants to chase, and the masculine is so confronted by what they're feeling that they want to run away. And then eventually the feminine sees she's also running, the masculine sees in a way he's also chasing,
yeah.
and then you reach more of a balance, an alignment.
Definitely, definitely.
So the third card here is I'm going through physical ascension symptoms. I feel depleted and I need space, but from a higher perspective, it's releasing old energy. And this
Okay.
suit is a suit of growth. So it's a suit about how we're changing our patterns to grow ourselves on a soul level.
Yeah, very interesting.
I think, there are certainly physical ascension symptoms at play right now. And I've been feeling it myself, and other people I'm talking to are feeling it, and just feeling tired in general and
Yeah,
needing space
yeah,
is a big one. The divine masculine too, I feel at this time, they just need space because they are trying to align with the 5D and what their higher self is calling them forward on, and that takes it's we need that time to go within to figure it out, to get the messages.
yeah, yeah. I love those readings. I love the reading from the feminine and the masculine. Very insightful. I mean, you could say, going back to the spring equinox, it's stepping into who we are to expand and grow, isn't it? Really. So we've got those aspects there as well. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to share with regards to, insights with regards to the energy and what we're experiencing, and even the aspects of mirroring, so that people can really honor those mirrors and, from the masculine aspect of what we just read, is grow from it?
um well, I think one of the things that really helps with the mirroring is learning to really have compassion for other people. Um, when we're more in our unhealed state and we're acting more from our own projections, we find it very hard to understand other people and understand their motives.
Yeah.
And we're just assuming, we create stories in our head, right? Well, this person is acting that way because,
Yeah.
and we make up a story.
Yeah.
But the more that we expand our consciousness, we develop this compassion for other people. And we begin to see that we don't need to project our story onto them, that it's just a story. And we kind of let go of that. We don't try. We just say, well, gee, that person's acting that way because they're wounded somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not about me, because however people are treating us, it's always about them and what they're projecting onto us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's another big step that people make on the twin journey, that brings balance, because when you're still in your stories, then you're judging everything. You're judging everything the other person's doing. You're judging everything you're doing. And often we judge everything as bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about dropping that and it's just saying, hey, we all got healing to do. I need to give that person the space and time to heal the things that they need to heal. And I'll heal my stuff
Yeah.
and try not to judge.
Definitely. Fantastic. No, I love what you just said there, and I think that's very insightful with regards to, stepping away, not judging others, but just noticing maybe aspects that they need to heal, honoring their space. Maybe they're acting from that masculine energy, whatever that might be within themselves, and just honoring one another and appreciating it, one another's paths on our journey, you know.
Yes, someone commented on a video of mine the other day and they said, I don't get this. All I'm getting from my twin is he's denying the connection. And the divine masculine are supposed to be awake. And I said, well, awakening doesn't necessarily mean that you're healed because, I use myself. I was awake to the connection.
Mhm.
It took me a couple years to actually go from knowing to
Yeah,
actually being healed enough to start to take steps towards my twin. So
definitely.
just because someone is awake or feels the connection doesn't mean they're healed enough to start coming forward. Unfortunately, they have to go through the triggers and
Yeah,
really, each twin um, mirrors because they're working in tandem with each other.
yeah,
So basically, everything you've gone through, your twin has to go through that in their own way. You get to that same space.
yeah, definitely. And I think we also need to understand the fact that the twin flame journey is probably one of the most challenging journeys of our third dimensional reality. From an emotional aspect, it takes us to some beautiful heights, and it takes us to some very, very challenging lows. But within that, we find ourselves, and that's what's beautiful about it in many ways, isn't it?
I wouldn't trade it.
Sometimes I would,
But I think that's, you mentioned a good point, because there might be some lows for people coming up. But
Mm,
when you're in that low, it's really important to remember the highs and to know that the low isn't going to last forever. And there will be more highs. And the further you go along, the more highs than lows.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that brings us on towards the end of the interview, really. And I want to say thank you so much for joining me today as we explored the energies of the collective with regards to twin flames and what's kind of coming up for us. And also speaking about the subject of triggers, wounds, healing, and more importantly, mirroring, because Mirroring is a blessing for each and every one of us if we only allow ourselves to see what is being reflected back. So it's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me back, Andy. I really enjoyed our conversation last time, and I enjoyed this today too. So thank you.
My pleasure. And finally, where can we find out more about yourself, your work, and more importantly, at the moment, your oracle cards?
Mhm. Thank you. So my Oracle cards are now on Kickstarter, and we're going to post the link, I think, in this video below. And also, if you just search on Kickstarter, it's called the Intuit Twin Flame Oracle Deck. And I think we still have about 10 days of the Kickstarter left, but we are already fully funded. So the deck is definitely going to be printed, but it is discounted right now. And it'll be a little bit more expensive when the Kickstarter's over. So it is a benefit to get it now if people are interested, but it will be available at Intuit Oracle even after the Kickstarter is finished. And people can find me on my website, which is twinstrology.com. That's where I have my blog. And I also offer different services, twin flame readings and astrology, tarot. I do past life regressions as well, both online and in person. And there's more information in that on my website. I'm on YouTube at Twinstrology if people want to follow my videos there. And I do little daily pick-a cards on Instagram at Marla Kelly 13. So I'd love for people to connect with me there as well.
Perfect. Thank you again for sharing. Just to let you all know as well, if you're connecting with this on YouTube or even on, the podcast links, all of the links to Marla's, social media channels and even website will be below the video. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Marla, for joining me. And I wish you all the best on your spiritual journey as you wake to who you are. Take care and much love to all of you. Bye for now.
Thank you.
It's also about the masculine coming back into balance.
I had reconciled my mind and my soul.
A world opened up that words cannot describe.
But you have to love yourself. You can only love another to the extent to which you love yourself. That simple yet profound truth.